Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. My father passed away 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack. He was a strict but loving man who worked tirelessly to ensure I had a good life. Loyalty and honesty were his most cherished values, and he embodied them in every aspect of his life. While my parents' marriage had its share of problems, my father tried his best to make it work. He believed in the sanctity of marriage, but as I found out, that belief came at a significant cost for him. Immediately after my father's funeral, when my grief was still raw, my mom sat me down for a conversation that changed everything. She told me I had a half-sister named Emily. She explained that Emily was the result of an affair she had during her marriage to my father. My father had discovered the affair when my mother became pregnant, and he was devastated. Furious and feeling utterly betrayed, he gave her an ultimatum. Either she would end the pregnancy or give the baby up for adoption, or he would divorce her. Desperate to salvage their marriage and preserve our family, my mother chose to give the baby up. She arranged for her sister, who lived in Europe at the time and couldn't have children of her own, to adopt the child. My father agreed with such an arrangement, though it was clear he never forgave her for her betrayal. My mother claimed this arrangement was a compromise that allowed her to keep our family. She insisted she had done the right thing for everyone involved. Growing up, I was blissfully unaware of this dark chapter in my parents' lives. Throughout my childhood, my mother claimed that she and her sister were not close. She said their relationship was strained, which is why we never visited or spoke about her sister's life. I never thought much of it. Only once I found a photo of a baby girl I stumbled across as a child. When I asked about it, my mother brushed it off, saying it was a picture of her sister's daughter, my cousin. She dismissed my curiosity, but I didn't think much of it at the time. After her bombshell revelation, my mother continued, telling me that after my father's death, she reached out to her sister and her daughter. She said it was her chance to make things right after being robbed of the opportunity to be a mother to Emily. Her voice cracked as she spoke of the suffering she's endured all these years. She said she wants her daughter back in her life, and she wants to repay her for all the years of not having her real mother in her life, and that I need to help her do that. Then, she drops a shocking request. She asked me to share my father's inheritance with my half-sister. She said my father would have wanted it because he always felt guilty of robbing my mother of her second child. Well, my father's will was unambiguous. Everything was to go to me. He had worked tirelessly to provide for me and ensure my future. The inheritance was more than just money. It was a testament to his sacrifices and his love for me. I told my mother, firmly and without hesitation, that I would not share the inheritance. Emily had no legal or moral claim to it, and I wasn't going to dishonor my father's wishes, and I was sure he would roll in his grave if I would give his hard-earned money to my mother's affair child. My mother's reaction was explosive. She accused me of being selfish and heartless, claiming that my father would have wanted to make things right for Emily if he was still alive. She said Emily was my blood, she was my sister, who was robbed of having a mother, and she deserves the inheritance for what my father did to her. Her words stung, but I knew they were untrue. For a few weeks after our argument, I believed the matter was settled. But then I received a letter from my father's estate lawyer. To my utter shock, Emily had filed a claim against the inheritance, presenting a birth certificate that listed my father as her biological parent. I was stunned. I was sure that my father would never have signed such a document, especially knowing Emily was the result of my mother's affair, and after demanding my mother gets rid of her or gives her up for adoption. When I confronted my mother, she claimed that my father had signed the birth certificate himself. She said she had done it because he felt guilty about forcing her to give up her daughter all those years ago. At first, I was taken aback. The idea that my father, a man so principled and deeply hurt by her betrayal, would suddenly reverse his stance didn't sit right with me. Something about her explanation felt off, and her nervous demeanor only deepened my suspicion. I decided to investigate further, and what I discovered left me seething with anger. My lawyer had uncovered that my mother had forged the birth certificate. She had falsified my father's signature and had the document notarized by a shady acquaintance. She orchestrated the entire scheme, using the forged document to bolster Emily's claim to the inheritance. I was furious. My mother had not only tried to steal my inheritance, but had also dragged Emily into her web of lies. I couldn't let her actions go unpunished. I decided to sue my mother for forgery, fraud, and emotional distress. When she was served with the lawsuit, she showed up at my house, screaming and crying, accusing me of ruining her life. She tried to paint herself as the victim, claiming she had only done what she did to make things fair for Emily. She said I was tearing the family apart and refused to acknowledge her wrongdoing. She repeatedly insisted that she had been robbed of being a mother to Emily and that it was my duty to make things right. Emily, on the other hand, was mortified. She reached out to apologize and revealed that my mother had pressured her into filing the claim. Emily had been reluctant from the start, but felt she had no choice. She even offered to testify on my behalf, which she eventually did. Her testimony was the final nail in the coffin for my mother's case. The court ruled in my favor. My mother was ordered to pay a significant fine, and while she avoided jail time, her reputation was shattered. Family members who had initially supported her turned their backs after learning the full extent of her actions. She now lives in a small apartment and constantly complains about how I ruined her life. She tells anyone who will listen that I'm a greedy, ungrateful child who turned on my own mother. My grandparents have urged me to forgive her, saying, "She's still your mom," but I can't bring myself to feel sympathy for her. She not only betrayed my father, but she also betrayed me, lied to me, and tried to rob me of the legacy my father worked so hard to leave behind. Her actions have left a permanent scar on our relationship. Emily and I have stayed in touch, and while our relationship is still fragile, she's expressed deep regret for going along with my mother's scheme and has been supportive since the truth came out. I don't blame her. She was as much a victim of my mother's manipulation as I was. I've spent months grappling with this situation. Part of me wonders if I was too harsh in suing my own mother. OP's mother's actions were manipulative and deceitful. Forging legal documents is a serious crime, and she tried to use it to steal what OP's father left for OP. It's not just about the money. It's about respecting OP's father's wishes and legacy. OP had every right to stand up for herself and protect what legally belongs to her. OP's mother created this situation, not OP. OP needs to be strong and not let anyone guilt her into feeling otherwise. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. Your mother clearly hasn't taken accountability for her actions. She betrayed not only your father, but also you and Emily by dragging her into this mess. What she did goes beyond mere family drama. It was fraud, plain and simple. Suing her wasn't just necessary. It was the only way to protect yourself and ensure justice was served. You've been more than patient, and honestly, you handled this with grace. Not the a-hole. Forgiveness doesn't mean ignoring serious wrongdoings or allowing people to walk all over you. Your mother's behavior was selfish and destructive, and she involved an innocent party, Emily, in her scheme. You have every right to honor your father's legacy and protect what he left for you. She made her choices, and now she has to face the consequences. You're not the bad guy here, and don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Not the a-hole. The fact that your mother went so far as to forge documents and manipulate Emily into filing a claim says a lot about her character. It's heartbreaking that she put you and Emily in this position, but none of this is your fault. You handled this with far more patience and decency than most people would. At the end of the day, you honored your father's wishes, and that's what matters. Keep your head high, and don't feel guilty for doing the right thing. A few years ago, my partner and I accidentally ended up pregnant. Ladies, if you are taking antibiotics, they might affect your birth control. I knew I couldn't take care of her, so my partner and I agreed to adopt her out to family members. But from the start, I was very ill, and I knew I could lose her, so didn't want my actual first choice to adopt her to know anything. We only told the people we had to, so my brother-in-law and sister-in-law wouldn't learn about her. I didn't want them getting their hopes up just to lose her. But my sister had dealt with a difficult pregnancy, so I contacted her to ask for advice, and said that a childless cousin and wife were getting the baby. Well, my sister was offended that a cousin would get the child instead of her, even though she had 2 kids already, one of whom had dealt with health issues in the past. She shipped over giving advice and berated me, giving me an anxiety attack. She threatened to cut off contact with her kids, threatened to tell everyone, anything she could think of to blackmail me into giving her the baby. Later, my daughter was stillborn, like so close that if she'd been induced the day before, she'd have been fine. When I told my sister, I was accused of lying and hiding the baby, told I would never see my nibblings again, and never to contact her again. Our mother has been saying that I hurt her feelings and made her feel like I didn't think she'd be a good mother to my baby. That's why she had such a strong reaction. She also said that my sister believes me and is sorry she hurt me. I said she has my number and can call to say sorry whenever she wants. But she said not to call her. But apparently she's taken that back and wants me to call. I'm the oldest, so have always been made to say sorry first growing up, so everyone probably expects it. So am I the a-hole for not having her my first choice to adopt, and for not calling to apologize first? Edit 1. I knew about the antibiotics. There was also a broken condom, but I only knew because it happened to someone else. My pharmacist didn't mention, my doctor didn't, and much of the country has abstinence-only S.Ed, so I certainly didn't learn there. I was sharing so others would know. Edit 2. The couple that wanted to get my daughter were my brother-in-law and his wife, but I didn't want them to get wind of any of this, so I said a cousin because I have tons of those. She couldn't have found a cousin where I only have one married brother-in-law. My sister was never going to get my daughter. I wasn't tricking her into thinking she wouldn't get the baby when she would. She had 2 kids. My partner's brother and brother's wife had been trying for years without success. They have since adopted another child and love him as much as they would one from their bodies. Final edit. Based on some suggestions, I had a talk with my mother. She has agreed to not pressure me to contact my sister and only give me reports on how the nibblings are doing. Since that, she has been doing very well and respecting how much it hurts me to think about everything that happened. Also, based on another suggestion, I had Mom ask my sister if I could resume contact with my nibblings. My sister and her husband took some time to think about it and said yes. I'm going to get a greeting card basically saying hi and I love them, and it will have a couple self-addressed envelopes and stamps as well as a few dollars, and my email, so they can choose how to get back to me. They might decide the idea of exchanging cards is fun, hence the money. I know it's an old-fashioned idea, but you never know. I thought a card might be better than a letter because then they can choose how to do this, rather than a big info dump, which their parents might not even allow them to read. And in a few years, they'll be able to make their own choices on what to do and already have an open line to me. Not the a-hole. I wouldn't be surprised if the stress of what your sister did to you caused this. She doesn't care about anyone but herself. If I were you, I would never want to see her ever again. Stop letting them manipulate you. The things that your sister said and did cannot be taken back. Not the a-hole. It was your baby that you grew and had every right to choose who that baby went to. No offense to you or your family, but your sister sounds spoiled and entitled. I can't imagine trying to pick on and manipulate someone in their time of need. Not the a-hole. Nobody should be entitled to have someone else's baby. You have nothing to be sorry for. It wasn't about her. It was about gifting childless parents with the baby. Your sister is so self-centered. If she really feels sorry, she can call. Using your mother to make you call her for her to apologize is insane. I am sure she wants you to apologize before she does it. Don't. She has to grow up and learn how to treat people. And I'm sick of stupid protocol based on age. She messed up. She has to apologize, not you. You being the eldest is not relevant. 17 years ago, I, 39 female, started going to a new local bar with friends. I quickly became friends with the owner, 51 male. We just clicked. It was great. Over a year later, in early 05, we started dating. I openly admit I loved him deeply. It ended the last week of 07 because I found out he cheated. I was devastated. I went full no contact for almost a year. Once I got over it, I realized I missed the friendship we had, so I reached out. He felt the same. We became closer than we ever were. It has been 100% platonic since then. The only thing that might be considered inappropriate is he calls me B. It's shortened from beautiful. He's called me that since I've known him. That's it. In 2011, when I was diagnosed with cancer, he went to chemo with me. In 2013, when his mother and sister tragically died in a car accident, I held his hand as he gave the eulogy. This is how close we are. Through all of this, it was never anything more than friendship. In 2015, I met my husband, 39 male. Around the same time, best friend opened a second location of his bar, so we didn't see each other much. Husband met best friend at his bar, saw him multiple other times too. Never had an issue. I was 100% transparent about the fact that we dated. Still no issue. I had kids and was tied up. We rarely saw each other, but talked almost daily. Husband and I have 2 kids, 3 female, 1 male, and I adopted his daughter from his first marriage, 7 female. Husband is an improved productivity consultant and is out of town frequently. I'm a stay-at-home mom. Recently, best friend hired someone to handle day-to-day of his bars, so he could concentrate on the in vitro him and his girlfriend, 52 female, of 3 years were trying. It was successful. He's beyond excited. He's been reaching out more to me because I have kids. Advice, opinions, etc. Multiple times a day. Last week, best friend invited me to an impromptu lunch. Hadn't seen him in almost a year. I happily got the kids ready and went. Husband flipped the duck out. It was disrespectful and inappropriate to go without him. He was okay with friendship from afar, but since we talk more now, it makes him uncomfortable that I'm prioritizing a man I used to sleep with, and I should back off and cut him out. I'm shocked. In 5 years, he has never hinted that it bothered him. They get along great, laugh and joke. I refused. Duck that. You don't get to pick my friends. It's been 17 years. Before this lunch issue, husband has never shown controlling or even odd behaviors. We've had such a great relationship. This came out of left field. Am I the a-hole? Edited to add. The B thing. My husband has known all along what it is from. He asked, why does he call you B? And I was honest. Best friends started reaching out more, not me. I respond when I can. 3 kids keep me busy. We don't call really, haven't for years. It's texting. I'm very much in love with my husband. I love our life. Finally, all the notifications prompted my husband to ask what the duck was up with my phone. I showed him this. He's less than thrilled I put our business online, but it prompted us to agree to discuss it tonight after the kids go to bed. Neither of us want our marriage to end. Not the a-hole. You've been transparent about your past since the beginning, and he hasn't had a problem with the friendship until now. You may want to ask him what else is bothering him, because it doesn't make any sense that it's your best friend. You're both in committed relationships and have children. If your hubby is feeling insecure all of a sudden, try to get to the root of that, but don't let go of your friendship. I had a similar issue with my boyfriend of 3 years and my best friend of 18 years. I got diagnosed with cancer and best friend immediately traveled from out of state to visit. Boyfriend suddenly had an issue with him being around. Turns out, the visit just made boyfriend feel like he wasn't doing enough for me. Egos are fragile. Not the a-hole. Here's why. It makes him uncomfortable that I'm prioritizing a man I used to sleep with. This isn't true. I know it's not because in order to prioritize a person, it has to be at the expense of something else. That could be your husband or kids, your job, your home, but it isn't any of that. There's no complaint that you're neglecting him or the children. Your job is as a homemaker and mother, neither of which are roles that are having their quality questioned. So what exactly are you prioritizing your friend over? If there was an answer, it would be your husband's jealousy, and in my opinion, that would be a smart use of prioritization. Don't entertain ignorant actions by questioning your own judgment. Everyone sucks here. Am I the only one feeling like OP is really underselling the romantic aspect and bulking up the platonic aspect? Yes, he may have been there for you and you were there for him for big events, but those big events happened way before you even met your husband. It's obvious to me that this relationship waned as you became more committed to your current husband. Not sure if that was something you did, he did, or your husband did, but that seems to be the truth of it. Now, it's seeming like you're home alone more. Since your husband is away, you're bored, and have started emotionally investing more and more into this man through frequent phone calls and texting. You admitted yourself you have not even seen this man in over a year, which speaks enough for the actual quality of the relationship. So why were you so ready to see him in person one-on-one? At least I think so. Wasn't sure if you meant you brought your kids with you, when you would usually spend time together in group settings or with your husband, as soon as your husband leaves for a few days. I think you're lying to yourself, and your husband is picking up on these details while you try to pretend they're irrelevant. Either way, you have suddenly decided to treat this man with the same attention as you had when you were single and childless, which would definitely be a red flag if I was your husband. But also, everyone sucks, because you shouldn't have to give up the relationship if it's truly as platonic as you say it is. Your husband should trust you, but you could stand to act a bit more trustworthy. Some info. My friend, T, had the biggest crush on my wife back when we were teens. She isn't interested since she had a crush on me. T convinced me to ask her out with the intention of dumping her. The whole point was she'd be heartbroken, then he'd be there for her. Very dumb, heartless, and not my proudest moment, believe me. We were both two stupid 19-year-olds. A couple of months later, I felt guilty and told her the whole truth. She stopped being friends with us both. Months later, I missed her and reached out because, surprise, got feelings for her. Took her time to forgive me, but we tried a relationship for real. Been together ever since. T, of course, heard about this, and we haven't been friends in a long time. It's been 12 years. Still have a few same friends from back then, but haven't seen T around. One of our close friends got married last weekend. Went with my wife and our son, who's 6. We knew T'd be there too, but didn't think anything of it, especially with it being so long already. During the reception is when it got weird. Wouldn't stop staring at our table. We said hi before that, but didn't make conversation. He came over again sometime later after he'd been practically staring for an hour and already drunk. Made some comments about how crazy life worked out after stealing my girl, like if this was some high school drama. Being creepy the way he looked at my wife. When my son came back to the table, T tried to introduce himself to him as one of our old friends from school, then made a joke that he almost could have been his dad. We stopped him there. My wife took my son to the dance floor, and I told T to leave us alone for the rest of the night. He claimed he wasn't doing anything wrong, so my wife and I decided to go. We informed the groom, my friend, we were leaving, and he asked us why, so I told him. Instead, he had his brothers ask T to talk outside, to avoid a scene, then told him to leave. Security didn't let him back into the hall. My friend apologized to us. He didn't think T would behave like that, even if he was drunk. Some of our friends heard what happened at the party and think I was an a-hole for completely overreacting having T kicked out, simply because he also had a right to be there celebrating our friend's wedding, and to cut him some slack because he was drunk. Obviously, seeing us together brought back old feelings, so we can't blame him. I get we have history, though it wouldn't be a big deal after all these years, and he made us uncomfortable with his comments, especially around my son. Wasn't expecting something like this to happen, so I'm not sure if maybe I did overreact, instead of ignoring T and let him be part of the celebration too. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You didn't have him kicked out, the groom did. You were going to leave. Not the a-hole. Cut him some slack because he was drunk. Pfft, the hell with that. I don't know why people think this is ever a decent excuse. Of course he did have a right to be there, but he didn't have the right to be there at the expense of other people's comfort, drunk or not. Not the a-hole. From what I read, you didn't ask him to be removed. You and your wife chose to remove yourselves from the situation to avoid causing a scene. Politely informed the groom you were leaving, and he's the one who asked why and acted on the information given to him. You didn't ask for T to be removed. You simply answered a question as to why you were leaving. Sorry, but the inappropriate behavior is on T, regardless of whether he was drunk or not. OP, you're in the clear, mate. My sister has been cheating on her husband for about 3 months, or at least that's what she told me when I found out. They've been married about 18 months. So I found out when the idiot accidentally sent me a paragraph of pretty strongly incriminating flirting and instructions to meet up while in the bathroom at my house, with her husband in the living room watching movies with me and my husband. It was very evidentially not intended for her husband, and even talked about when he would be at work, so on. I confronted her later that night, and she flipped out. She first started saying he was aggressive to her, and that she was doing it out of revenge. I found that hard to believe. But when I pushed on it, she tried to play it off that when she said aggression, she just meant he wasn't fulfilling her needs. I told her to grow the F up and talk to her husband instead of betraying him. She said she would. I promised I wouldn't say anything. 2 months down the line, and she still hasn't. We play a weekly game of Dungeons & Dragons, which I run for my husband, her and her husband, and a mutual friend of ours. Conveniently, her and her husband's characters are married in the game. Eventually, I boiled over and created a situation in the story which heavily implies her character was cheating on his, and I used real-world locations and people, thinly disguised, to push the point. Finally, it clicked in his head, and he thought it was a joke at first, but I kept a straight face and stared at him. He caught on, and she started crying and stormed out. He went after her. This was 2 days ago, and I've not heard from either. I feel like I betrayed her trust while telling her not to do that to him. But at the same time, I feel like she doesn't deserve my respect given the situation. Everyone sucks here. You told him this through a tabletop game? Why couldn't you have pulled the guy aside and talked to him like an adult? Seriously. Wife is obviously not in the right for cheating, and I support you exposing this, but not the way I would have chosen. I think you made it worse than it had to be. Everyone sucks here. You're not an a-hole for telling him, which was the right thing to do, but doing it in such a public and convoluted, seemingly sarcastic way was not the right way to handle it. She obviously sucks for cheating on him. He doesn't suck, I guess, but there is no abbreviation for everyone sucks except for the third party. Everyone sucks here, leaning towards yes the a-hole. I would ultimately say that it's not your business, and what you did was wrong, not to mention basically airing it in front of that friend and your husband. If you were really going to tell him, you shouldn't have made a show out of it. That's the most disgusting part about this. What did you expect her to do when she caught on? Announce it in front of everyone? And you do realize that you also forced him to make a jerk out of himself, right? There's a good chance that he pulled the, "oh, this is a joke" card to save face, since he probably didn't want to get into a serious private discussion in front of everyone, and you forced him to do that. Your sister is still obviously an a-hole. Cheating is awful, and she knew that she would have to tell him for 3 months now. I don't know if she continued to cheat during that time, or was merely gearing up to tell him, but either way, 3 months is enough time to figure that out. I would say of the three of you, her husband is the only one that's not an a-hole here.